So we have now 17 sustainable goals, So much more than the MDGs, right? We ended up with 17 goals because we negotiated. For example, developed countries had their own goals, They had their own favorite goals to be included. Developing countries also had their favorite goals to be included. So they sort of, okay, then you guys put this thing in and we will put this. So they ended up many goals. But if you look at the bright side, it has a great advantage because now we know that we are not missing anything. We have 17 goals. We can pursue them knowing that we are not missing anything. We are not leaving anything out. So we know that if we achieve all of these goals, then our next generation will be living in a much better world. But the problem is how to achieve all of these. But anyway, there is an advantage of having 17 goals that cover almost everything in the world. And we call it universality of the goals. So I already told you that all kind of these problems are either coming from globalization or aggravated by globalization. You might ask, even terrorism? Yes, even terrorism. What is terrorism about? My grandfather, who passed away before I was born, never met anyone from Africa, never met who is Muslim. I think some of you from Africa, your grandfather probably never met anyone looking like me in his life, right? But nowadays, not only you meet me, but you listen to my lecture, and you came all the way to Korea to attend this course for 1 week. And if you tell that when you go back home, nobody will raise their eyebrow. So what? You went to Korea and attended a 1 week workshop, so what? But my grandfather would be very surprised. You went to Africa? Where is Africa? So, what is happening? We need to live with and deal with people who are different from us. I started my lecture by saying that in 1985, I was really amazed that there are so great diversity among people. But our gene, our DNA, has not yet changed. We are more comfortable with people who are similar to us, who look similar, who speak same language, who eat same food, who live in same culture, who has same religion. We are not comfortable with people who are different from us by our nature. So, world is being globalized, but we are not globalized. Why not? Because our genes don't change. Just like as we lived as hunters and gatherers, we have this instinct to stick to what we have, even though we cannot consume all of it. Just like that, our genes have not changed. We are more comfortable with people who are similar to us. But reality is that you have to live with people who are different from you. If you live in Middle East, you have to deal with Israel. You have to deal with Christians, which your grandfathers didn't have to do. So, there is more terrorism. There is more fighting. There is more refugees. But, as I said, you cannot reverse this. You cannot ban Europeans and Christians coming to the Middle East. You have to live with them. Then what do we do? That's why we need global citizenship education. We educate our next generation so that even though their genes don't change, they can learn how to live with differences. they can learn, deal with differences better than we do, so that we can reduce possibility of clashes, reduce possibility of conflict, reduce possibility of terrorism, reduce everything that comes from the fact that now we have to deal with people who are different from us on a daily basis. What is global citizenship? In my opinion, it is about being open-minded. We should educate our next generation to be open-minded. We need education because we are not open-minded by nature. We are closed-minded by our nature. So that's why we need education. When we are young, when we are kids, we identify ourselves with our family members. And then as we grow older, we identify ourselves with community, your village, your town, your school, your church. You identify yourselves with them. And then when you reach a certain age, you realize that you belong to a state. I don't know when it was the first time that you realize that you belong to a state. You belong to your country. In Korea, some boys realize that when they go to the army. Some people realize that when they make their first foreign trip. But there must have been a moment when you realize that you are a citizen of your country. In some cases, nation is a wider concept. For example, Korea. Korean nation is a larger concept than South Korea. Because in North Korea, we also have Koreans. In the world, there are 80 million Koreans. 50 million of them are in South Korea. 25 million of them are in North Korea. And 7 million are all over the world. I don't know how it is for your country, but in the United States, state is larger concept than nation. In the United States, they have hundreds of different nations or ethnic groups. But whichever is the case, now you better consider yourself as a member of the international community, a global citizen. Because if you cannot do that, we will not be able to deal with globalization. We will continue to fight. We will continue to spoil the earth. We will continue to see growing gap between the rich and poor. Two most important elements of global citizenship is universal values and respect for diversity. Universal values mean even though we are all different, there must be something common. For example, life is important for all of us, right? If we are Christian, if we are Muslim, if we are Buddhist, whatever religion you have, there is no religion that I know that arguing that life is not important. We can kill people as much as we like. There's no such religion, right? So life is important for all of us. Human rights are important for all of us. Even some dictatorships, they don't call themselves dictatorship. They call themselves democracy. All countries in the world argue that they are democracy. So that means human rights, democracy are probably a universal value. We all cherish that value. So there are some values that are common to all of us. And other than those values, the rest of our culture, we respect diversity. We respect difference. We respect what others are doing that might not be part of our culture, but that is not in conflict with universal values. So we respect them as they are. That's two most important elements of global citizenship: universal values and respect for diversity. There are some issues to be considered in global citizenship education. The first of which is that sometimes the two elements of global citizenship education, they conflict with each other. You know what I mean? There are our friends who are wearing hijabs, right? Here, even in this room. Wearing hijab doesn't bother anyone, does it? So it's a part of culture, part of difference to be respected. Even if you don't wear hijab, you shouldn't have anything against those who are wearing their hijabs due to their tradition. But let's say in some countries there is something called honor killing, like Malala. If girls don't behave themselves, fathers or brothers can kill her. Do you think it's part of a culture to be respected, or is it a violation of human rights? Violation of human rights, right? So we should draw a line. Not everything cultural or traditional is acceptable. Not everything cultural or traditional or religious should be respected as their diversity. There should be a line to be drawn. Because the other pillar of global citizenship, universal values. Human rights should be part of universal values. And we should be able to say no to something that is conflicting human rights, even though that might be traditional in their society. So that's very difficult. Where do you draw the line? Who judges? Who makes decision? Who knows which one is part of universal values and which one is part of culture to be respected? It's very difficult, but that's a task to be dealt with by all of us. I already told you that I don't agree to the term deglobalization. You cannot deglobalize. You can only resist globalization. You cannot reverse globalization. Even though I think globalization is not necessarily a good thing. I already told you a lot of problems that were brought by globalization, but still, whether you like it or not, you cannot reverse it. So if you are making efforts to reverse it, you are wasting your time. You are resisting globalization. We should try to make ourselves adapt to globalization. For example, through global citizenship education.